Good morning. Good. Are we ready to start? Okay. All right. I'll call the meeting to order. First, I'll go over, do a short recap of what we talked about, went over yesterday. We confirmed the meeting dates that we'll be meeting on the 10th, December 10th and 11th. On those days, all day on the 10th and from 9 until noon on the 11th. We talked about tentative agreements and TAs, and we actually executed a couple of TAs, I think it was, for them. We went over some other articles, and then we went over some definitions. So that was a big part of yesterday, as I have it documented. Today, we'll go again until noon. We'll talk about the extension document, then past deadline, which is December 9th, since today is December 3rd, 4th, 3rd. Okay. And then we'll continue some discussion on articles, and then we'll have a presentation. So the extension document.
So the impasse deadline is December 9th, and enables us to meet on the 10th and the 11th. We need to execute a document today that'll extend, the statute allows it to go for an additional 15 days. That puts it right at December 24th.
Okay, is that agreeable to you? We had talked about that earlier and knowing that we were gonna have to get that executed, and this is our last meeting before that date hits.
Looks pretty standard to me.
Okay.
Questions on? You good? We're good.
Okay.
Mr. Williams, do you know if the streaming link is going to be up today?
I'm not sure. We'll check on it.
Cool. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is continued discussion of following articles. We have some articles listed. Article 6, union business, Article 26, temporary promotions, and Article 23, hours and overtime pay. So we can start with Article 6 on union business and continue that discussion.
That was 6:26, and the other one, Mr. Williams?
6, 26, and 23.
23. Thank you.
If we can add management rights to that as well, I think it was part of the discussion yesterday. If we could reach an agreement on the definition for management rights, then we could do that one as well.
Okay.
And so all of the sections that were named have, I guess, definition qualifications. So do we need to discuss the definitions first, or do you want to just jump straight into the articles?
Yeah, we can jump into the articles.
So in management rights, the city had proposed adding full direction, and we agreed to remove the word full with the adoption of the definition.
Too many passwords. Thank you. Do you have any questions on that? No? No questions on it? Yeah, it got removed, right?
Yeah, so the city agreed to remove the word full with the adoption of the definition for management rights.
She give you.
We're good.
I'm sorry, are we adopting the definition for management rights, just so Kelly can check that one off the list?
You good with that one?
Current practice.
So,
Am I going to the top or to the bottom?
I want to see lower than that.
Okay, that's, yeah. We also took out any number, just so that it would be clear that anybody could go. They took out any number since we removed the section on the number of people that can go that was talked about last time. Any member can go in section B, so we removed any member. But the only changes that were made were in section 6, or substantive changes, that no more than 2 union members or officers or elected delegates per shift. So we added the per shift language. And I said the only thing is, if you wanted, I know we discussed doing a number, so that was, whether it was 6 in total, so you can do it 6 on one shift, or 6 across the board, or 2 per shift, since that was the current practice.
Back up just a little bit. I couldn't
Up to the
hear what you were
top?
saying.
No, I said in sections.
In section 6A is where you're
6A.
talking
So
about?
we didn't make any changes to B. Like, that's the original wording, other than to add in writing. That was the original change that was not requested. And I think we had allowed, we changed the employer to the fire chief, so that's who gets the request. There was a thing for any number of members. We just left it for members to attend. So there's not a cap on the number of members who can request off to attend. In the A section, after the discussion, it said that it was the typical practice was to allow 2 per shift. So we just added the 2 per shift language.
I think, I just want to look at it on paper whole in just a minute, but one thing that comes to mind is on the off chance that we have all 3 of our delegates on the same shift, is there any way that we could word that to specifically allow just the number of delegates to be increased? So like 2 per shift.
And then
Right.
a person on days if necessary, if that's what you wanted to do.
So there's a total number we're talking about.
Yeah,
not-
so we can change the number. We can remove per shift and just put in a no more than number.
At one time, something like that.
Yes, sir.
For right now, until we could actually look at it on a big.
I think we have extra
You
sheet.
know, if we could actually look at it in front of us, but I believe we may be in agreement with the way it's written. I just wanted to look at it as a whole.
Okay, well, that's just, I think
In
we have
front of
extra,
me.
I think we have an extra copy. This will be the next big change was this language here to represent the on-duty. So if there's a change to that particular language.
That looks good.
Okay. If you're on that document, it would be page
Do you
2.
remind me, did we ever discuss or get a final answer on what the necessary documents are?
So apparently
To return to work?
there was a form that y'all used, but I guess that that could be updated.
Is that what we're talking about, is the request for training forms that we use now?
I guess you'd have to rename it, but yeah.
Is there an additional form or document, when it says return to work, is there? Not a problem, I'm just
No, I'm
curious
just saying,
what it
if
is.
we kept it, we didn't give it a name just in case the form was ever renamed. We thought that was more procedural,
But
but
that line is just
yeah.
about that form?
yes, sir.
Okay,
So there's an existing form already. That's the one you currently use then? Right. That's the one we're talking about.
Yeah, so we didn't give the form a name in the event that the form was renamed.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Do we need to, I guess, are we changing this language at all? Section 6. Okay.
Again, just before we actually TA on that, I'm not trying to be difficult, but could I see a copy of it to read it in its
all
entirety,
in
just right in front of me? Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did. On page 2. The bottom, page 2. Okay. The next one would have been temporary promotions. I'm sorry, or hours and overtime, did I pass it? Okay, let's just do hours and overtime. So there were no changes in section B, in section 1, there were substantive. The full changes came in section 2. So the schedule will remain the same, and the city proposed to keep the language that the fire chief shall have final authority over the assignment schedule. And then we also added another item that says that the employees that maintain their emergency medical dispatch EMD credentials shall be eligible for overtime assignments in the communication division. And so anyone who wanted to do that, the city would also provide assistance for paying for that training.
And number one is new language proposed?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What particularly is the purpose behind adding B1? What's the intent behind that?
In the last conversation we had, they said that that particular division was already understaffed. And so there are some people in the department that still have their credentials. And so if they wanted to maintain or get their credentials, the city would continue to pay for that to assist with the shortage.
What people are we talking about? Like firefighters that have worked in there before?
Yes, sir.
That's okay.
Yes, sir.
So the suggestion would be to pull people from the operations division of our department and put them in the communications division to be able to work overtime?
If they want to, yes. It'd be another overtime opportunity.
I think that could contradict our current overtime policy that we have. I think that could contradict that. That would need to be something we would need to look into.
Well, yeah,
We can
that's
take it
already
out.
done. So like I've worked in there since I've come out of dispatch. So if they run out of people that are available for overtime in there, then they can pull from people that are working in different divisions. So I guess that's why I ask is what the purpose behind adding it in the contract is, because it's already done.
So the purpose would be adding it so that now it's considered a contractual benefit. One, if someone who has their EMD credentials and wanted to maintain it after being moved out of the department, the city would pay to maintain it, and we're contractually obligated to do so now. The other thing was now it could be done. So I think before it was done where if there was an overtime opportunity and it needed it based on we're just low, now people can actually make themselves available to be assigned to communications as an overtime opportunity.
I think we're probably going to have to talk about this a little bit more, but before we move on from this, one thing that we talked about with the addition of the fire chief or his designee having final authority over the assignment schedule, I don't think we have a problem with that because the fire chief can choose who he wants to manage an overtime policy however he wants to. But if there's no policy on that, then our suggestion would be to create a policy and let's look at that policy the way it's written, just so we know moving forward that it's going to be managed fairly and equally to all the members. So I think that's the goal here anyway. So if we could just get a policy drafted
think that that's
before
the
we
kind of the
actually
intent.
TA on this.
I think that that's the intent of the guidelines committee that's being proposed is for post the meeting for y'all to look at any and all proposed policies moving forward.
Right, but this has to do with contract. You're adding language to the contract, whereas that policy committee will be looking at policies over a period of time. This is contractual language, so if you just want to handle it in the policy, then take it out of the contract and just handle it in the policy committee. Or just draft a policy for that overtime assignment schedule. And then we won't have anything to worry about. You know what I mean?
But I think you've already kind of answered your question that the chief has the final authority anyway, regardless. Adding this language into the contract doesn't change anything.
Right, I think we'd all be a whole lot better about this addition to the contract if we had a policy in place moving
I
forward.
guess I can have to remind you, the ground rules said that we're not going to discuss or debate policy, so we can't. put
Yeah, but
forth-
you keep putting policy-related items into the contract, so I
We put
think we're past
contract, we
that.
put contractual related issues into the contract.
This isn't a contractual issue, it's a policy issue, but we're willing to entertain it. We're just asking for a policy to be created so that we know that it's going to be managed fairly and equally moving forward. That's all I'm asking
So
for.
the negotiation team isn't going to draft a policy because that's the
you are.
responsibility of the department.
Right,
I'm not going to draft a policy.
wouldn't expect you to.
So, and so we're not prepared to negotiate a policy. If you don't like the language, just say you don't like the language.
We're okay with the language, just asking for a policy so that we know that it will be done fairly and equally, or we can just strike the language. I'm trying to be flexible.
Are you talking about the fire chief final authority language or the
No,
overtime?
The assignment schedule.
yeah, we're talking about everybody having an equal shot at the overtime, that there's not, I know the concern was that people were assigning themselves overtime. We just want something that's fair, you know, if someone's approving overtime, that everyone that's, I guess, eligible has the equal shot to,
And so
at the overtime.
my response to that would be the proposed guidelines committee would be one of the first committees that reviewed it. So if they had a problem that said, you know, we don't think this policy is going to be equitable and fair, they would have an opportunity to discuss changes and make those changes during that policy and that process before it even got to the chief and implementation. That's the whole spirit and purpose of that committee. Not for us to do it, but for that committee to do it.
Correct, I understand.
I just want to be clear, I wasn't proposing that you guys create a policy. The fire chief creates policies. I'm sure he could probably draft a policy for this pretty easily. This isn't a major issue. We already have a policy for the operations division, so it wouldn't be very hard to draft a policy for this. But on B1, just to clarify, are those individuals or those firefighters in our department that have worked in the fire alarm office before and maintain their EMD credentials?
Yeah, it says employees that maintain their emergency medical dispatch credentials.
Okay, so those that have worked in there before and maintained their credentials?
Yes.
Okay, I just
And I
wanted to
think
make
that-
sure.
If you allowed it to lapse, if there's individuals who've been out for a while, I think there's just a recertification class if they want to do it. And whatever, I guess, additional training that your training division would say that they would need to in order to be eligible would need to be clean. I think that would be more of a policy.
I just wanted to, it says maintain, but I just wanted to make sure we weren't talking about people that have never worked in there before but get their EMD credentials. We're just talking about people that have worked in there and
You
they're
can change
maintained.
it to say employees that have previously worked there or employees that are approved by the department.
Like I said, we probably need to,
Who is it?
talk
you're
on this a
trying
little bit
to
more.
Not give the overtime to.
I'm just asking for clarification.
Right, but it seems like there's angst about who's going to be getting or not getting this overtime. Who is it?
I'm just asking if we're talking about people that have worked in there. So if I've never worked in there and I go get my EMD certification, I'm still not really fit for that job because I've never worked in there before.
Okay,
That's what I'm asking.
so if this were limited to people, firefighters that have worked in that division before, is that?
Those are people that have been trained and worked in that office and know what they're doing.
Yeah, no,
That's all I'm asking.
That, and that makes sense, but I'm saying if that additional language is in there, limiting this provision to people who have worked in that division before, does that alleviate this discussion we're having about needing to also have a policy just to have the contractual language?
No, on that particular subject, sure, but number two is where the policy issue comes in, because it's about the assignment schedule. You're wanting the fire chief to unilaterally make decisions on who works overtime when, and there's no policy in place. So, you avoid favoritism when you have a policy in place. So just create a policy, and then I think we're going to be good. Or have him create a policy, not y'all.
I mean, but again, he has the final authority, whether there's a written policy in place or not to make that decision.
So we can change the wording to say employees that have previously worked and been or approved training, however you want to add that. And then I suggest that there be a policy that's implemented if you choose to adopt or go forward with the policy guidelines committee, that you implement those different procedures in the policy.
Yeah, so just want to add that policies having to do with our benefits, pay and benefits and working conditions would need to be approved mutually by Local 399 and the city.
Since it's in the contract. No,
So once we write that policy, that's why we want to see the policy. Once the
again,
fire chief would create that
that's the
policy.
benefit and the purpose of the Guidelines Procedure Committee, for there to be union representation in that meeting, addressing those policy concerns prior to it getting adopted and implemented into the department. So I hear you what you're saying, but that's why that's the whole sole purpose of that committee.
Right, well, unless it has to do with a benefit or working condition change, we would want to ensure if there's any policies that they work on in that committee that have to do with benefits of our members, those policy changes would ultimately have to be agreed upon mutually by Local 399.
I think that
and
was
the
the language that the union proposed to be put into that. We aren't here to talk about that particular provision today, but we can scroll up. The union did propose that language and the city didn't counter it.
And hold on, I think that the schedule assignments are a function that is always within, falls within the management rights. So what I'm hearing is that the union's request through the negotiation is that the chief essentially give up that right and have to get approval just to do schedule assignments, because you're gonna argue it's a maintenance of standards issue. And I'm just, feel free to jump in, team, if I'm wrong, but the city's not gonna agree to give up the right of the chief to manage the assignments of the firefighters. That function falls squarely within his rights.
We just went to an arbitration that disagreed with your opinion right now, that the chief does not have the
I
authority
don't
to
put
change
a
on
whole lot of stock in the
overtime.
decisions that come out of the arbitrators, so that's
Well, what we're asking
fine.
for is a policy so that we can approve that right now. The chief can write the policy, we can sit down and approve it. And because like we said, I don't think we have a problem with that. We just want to make sure that the process is fair, that it's upheld.
But the chief would then be in a position of deciding assignments right now in December of 2024 that he's going to be bound by, or the next chief or whoever's here, for another 4 years, if we're going to do a 4-year contract.
So are we saying that the chief was going to want to change the way he does this on a day-to-day basis?
I'm
the
saying
way
that
he
the
has
chief
done
has the right, that has the management right and the prerogative to assign people where they need to be for the efficiency of the department. And if the ask is that he give that up, that's not a chip that the city is willing to give up.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why we're even arguing about this. We're just asking to see how it's going to be handled. You are wanting to put this into the contract. We're asking for what it looks like so we know that it's going to be fair and equal. And at the same time, you're saying that the chief can do it anyway. So why are you putting it in the contract?
Just to make it clear to everybody that
It's not clear. That's what we're asking for, is clarity. So
and
either
so
do
there's the
it
clarity.
or
The-
let's
the
move
chief has
on.
the authority to do it.
Okay, we can move on.
Are we finished with that?
Apparently.
Okay.
The next was temporary promotions. So So on temporary promotions, there was discussion about a specific incident that occurred with a grade 1 doing functions at a captain. So the city is prepared to say double upgrade shall not be permitted in operations except with the approval of the fire chief or his designee in that line, if that's acceptable. And then we added language to section 5 that was discussed. The upgrade shall be mandatory and cannot be turned down unless requested in writing. Members that do not want to receive upgrades shall provide written notice to all operational chiefs and the fire chief or his designee at least 24 hours prior to the start of their shift and shall remain into effect. Should be not effective, sorry. Until rescinded in writing to all operational chiefs and the fire chief or his designee. Any request shall become effective on their next shift. So that means, just to be clear, that the request not to receive upgrades won't be effective until their next shift. There's the decision not to be removed or to now receive upgrades after the request will come in wouldn't be effective until the next shift. So if you did it on the day of your shift, you could still be upgraded. You'd have to do it before your shift started. It also addresses the concern of the day-to-day changes so that there would be, minimizes confusion. For whatever reason, if the list wasn't updated and someone said that they missed an upgrade. So it does allow for time for that to happen. Emailing all the operational chiefs also eliminates the concern that somebody else could be off duty and not receive it, so that they would at least know. The second one was changed, or 6 was changed to say after this schedule is entered into ESO or any system, just in the event that the city changes operational systems, that language was added. Being used by the department, any changes to the schedule that impact temporary promotions shall be made in accordance with the efficiency and operations within the department at the discretion of the deputy chief.
Yeah, I think we did talk about this a little bit, kind of back and forth between ESO and a specific time. I really think that it will prevent any confusion or problems if we just put a specific time. You know, y'all had a specific time before, it was just a little early, so I think we would probably propose noon, 12 o'clock PM, and then any changes after that. Basically, used by the department, any changes.
So I think the reason why we went with the ESO system, just because you can tell when it was entered and when it was actually done, and we were fine to do noon. It would just be the idea of how would we be able to track it if a deputy chief said the change came and I'd already finished the schedule, but it hadn't been entered to ESO, is that still going to be okay? If we did noon, we know that it's noon, regardless of whether the schedule was entered in the ESO or not. So if you're, again, it's kind of wherever you want to go.
So you're saying
So if you do,
make sure I understand. So we say noon and we agree on noon and they don't put the schedule into ESO until 1, that would be what you're talking about?
yes. So that I know one of the conversations you said is that it's never entered into ESO until a certain period of time. So we put the ESO, I thought that the language we're putting into ESO would be more amenable, just because it's a more trackable time. But if you wanted to change it to noon, then regardless of when the schedule was entered into ESO, it would be there. It does, I mean, if you, like you said, you've done the job before, so if you think that noon is more feasible.
Well, I don't see there being any reason that the schedule wouldn't be in ESO by 8:30 or 9 o'clock at the latest. But I also don't want to open the door for it to be put in halfway through the afternoon. So,
We had originally proposed 8 a.m., and then you came back with 8 p.m.
well,
So-
9 p.m., but
Yeah,
yes.
so several hours apart. But I guess and I can just tell you the idea behind it is that if there's ever a concern that someone was denied an upgrade based on the fact that the schedule had already been completed, at least there would be documentation that it was entered into ESO and completed. If you want to go with noon, then I would agree that the schedule is obviously done by noon. But in here, your statements, if we're going to say that the schedule is completed somewhere between 8:30 and 9 every day, then we're happy to go with 9 a.m.
As long as it continues to be done, but do you want to put language in there to say that the schedule will be in ESO by a certain time?
Well, I think it's either going to be that that we're not making impactful changes after 9 a.m. and then it'll be on the chiefs to be able to show how what time their schedule was completed in the event that there was an issue. Or we say that it has to be entered into ESO. Again, that puts the onus on the chief to say if he's going to not make a change based on seniority, then he needs to get his documentation into ESO as early as possible. It's not intended for it to be harmful to the member or to be a strain on the chief. It's intended for there to be some form of documentation to say, this is the time and the cutoff for when this potential person didn't get an upgrade. So to use your union steward example, if someone called and said, hey, so-and-so got an upgrade over me, and I want to know why, you can at least say, well, the schedule was already in ESO, and this is how we do it after the schedule's in ESO.
Right, well,
They weren't going to drive you across town or whatever.
the whole section is harmful to the members because whatever this time is, whatever this is agreed on, after that time, the deputy chief can either give a person an upgrade or not give a person an upgrade. So the whole entire premise of that section is harmful to the member. It's a matter of finding a time or, a point in the shift that we're okay with cutting that off with at.
So I'm saying it's not intended to be, though. I know that there's a lesser, to use the word, lesser benefit that's going to be perceived by someone who's not going to get the benefit of having an upgrade, but also the offset is that it's intended to reduce the grievances that come from that, from having to put a unit out of service for several hours just to accommodate somebody being upgraded for 3 hours.
Well, the grievances only come because the contract's violated. So putting this section in is trying to,
I disagree with that. It's alleged to be violated. It's not because it's violated. It's yet to be determined.
And
agree to disagree, but regardless, this is just finding a way around that.
I think really what this is trying to do, I understand that you're looking out for the members and what their benefits for. That's your job and you're doing it well. But the city is not doing this because somebody up here gets a benefit. This is to be able to make sure that the citizens in Beaumont are able to have access to emergency services in a timely manner, and efficiency in the department and how it's staffed helps to effectuate this. So I think the purpose of this is not to try to get some end run with grievances or to harm the members or reduce upgrade opportunities. The purpose from our side is to be able to allow management to make more decisions more efficiently so that the department can run for the benefit of the citizens. So I would just ask that you look at it through that lens. I think yesterday when the chief spoke, you agreed that it is easier it would be easier for management to make those changes with this language in there. So again, easy, efficient, that's really the goal of this. So if there's some other, and I think, again, the law allows the chief to just do this anyway. So this is giving an additional benefit or a way for it to be managed to accommodate some of the concerns of the members that you're representing. But the city has to be mindful that it's coming into this trying to make sure that the department can provide the best service to the citizens that are needing these services.
Yeah, we don't have any problem with providing the best service to the citizens. This doesn't have to do with that, but
Well, but you,
in the
but if there, but if management can't get assignments because there's all of these delays and they have to jump through all of these hoops before they can move people around or face a grievance, that doesn't allow management to operate efficiently, which then affects the service. I'm not saying that when the boots are on the ground, they're not providing the service. I'm saying getting people where they need to be is the problem.
Yeah. I don't think there's any hoops. I think there's the perception of hoops, but the problem, the biggest problem with adding something like this is the only reason this problem exists is because we're short-staffed right now. In the past, the schedule was done the shift before, and there were only very minor changes done. That's why there's never been a problem in the past. The majority of the problem is because we don't have enough people working for us. So
Cody,
if we really want to,
Cody, I think you're getting off topic this morning.
I'm not-
a little bit.
I'm
You
not
get
getting-
into things that we're not here to address in the contract right now.
this
And
directly
you're
has
bringing
to
up
do
a
with
lot
that.
of things that we probably need to address differently. So I would ask you to please stay with us, and let's try to work through this contract, and let's not get,
I'm with you. This
off into
has to do
some
with that,
topics.
but that's fine.
we talked about this extensively yesterday, this section. And we both went back and forth on things that we thought should be in it. And then went back and put it together based upon input from both groups, side tier. And it's memorializes it pretty, it's close to what we had talked about. So in principle, it's there. If there is a thing here or there that you now disagree with or whatever, I understand. But this is not like we didn't talk about that. We talked about this quite a while yesterday.
Sure. So I think we're good with noon as long as there's language added that the schedule will be done in ESO by a particular time. If y'all want to talk to our department management and see what that reasonable time is, then that would be fine.
So if this, but that's like, I guess that goes to the point. If you want the schedule in the ESO and you said it could be done by 9, and entered into the schedule by 9, then let's just go with 9. If we want to go with when it's entered into ESO, then again, that puts the responsibility on the chief, the deputy chief at the time, to make sure that the schedule's entered in a timely manner, whether it's 9, 9:30. But regardless, whenever the schedule is entered, that's his deadline and that's the cutoff time. So I know that sometimes the morning can be hectic, shift change, something happens, but essentially, if it's going to be, if they're saying that it's going to be hectic for them to make changes, that at least gives them some incentive to get the schedule in the ESO faster, or we can go at a particular time. But I think putting the double restriction in there isn't fair.
I think what we're trying to clarify is that there should be a certain time that the deputy chief should be able to have that schedule in the computer, in the ESO. But what we're asking for is that our members have enough time to review that schedule to address any of the problems that they have. So if we say that the deputy chief shall have the schedule put into ESO by 9 o'clock, that our members would have until noon to point any of those issues out, and that changes would need to be made to arrange for those members to have to be offered the upgrade.
So I guess my question and concern would be, is the problem coming in the creation of the schedule, or is the problem after the schedule is created when you have to make adjustments? And then my second question would be, are you asking for lower rank members to be able to essentially correct or challenge the decisions of their superiors?
I am asking that lower ranked people be able to follow the process to find out if they've been grieved, which would be to go through their chain of command if they felt like, or if they noticed that a person of lesser seniority was upgraded above them, they should be able to follow their chain of command to get that issue addressed. But they would need time to be able to do it. If the deputy chief doesn't get the schedule put in, if if he doesn't have a designated time to have that in, the computer, our members are gonna have, or they expected to sit around and watch the schedule to see whenever it does get posted to where they can address an issue if they're being harmed by not being offered that upgrade pay.
So I guess, so just so I'm clear, the concern is that sometimes the schedule, in the scheduling, that there's a mistake made and someone is passed for an upgrade and you need to correct that. It's not when the schedule is being adjusted to accommodate for someone for leave. Is that the concern, or is that what we're trying to correct with having a time frame to put it into E ESO?
I just want to try to shorten this. I'm tired of arguing about it. So
We're not, this is not arguing. I'm just trying to understand the concern.
What if we add after 10 a.m. or after the schedule is entered? That way, if the schedule's not done until 1 o'clock, that's whenever the time starts.
So
If
again,
it's done by 10, then we have no problem. So 10 or when the schedule is entered into ESO.
the later of which? So yeah, that's what I'm saying. You'd have to add language to say,
Right, so 10 o'clock,
whichever is
or if
later.
it's later, then when ESO is done.
so it would now read after the schedule is, after 10 a.m. or after the schedule is entered into ESO, whichever is later.
Correct.
We can discuss that.
I just want to add to, so it can be part of y'all's discussion, this also gives the deputy chief the opportunity, or I'm sorry, a little bit of latitude there in case a fire comes in or a major event comes in the morning. He's not tied to a certain time. There's a little bit of leeway that's allowed there for situations like that.
Did you want to talk about that double upgrade situation or no?
Remind me what it was that you wanted to add?
So we'll scroll back up
Thank you.
to here, where it says double upgrade shall not be permitted. And just to remind you, yesterday there was a conversation about a very unique particular incident that you said could occur again, giving the direction of the department. And so we propose to leave in the language that says double upgrade shall not be permitted, and then add without the approval of the fire chief or his designee.
I think as long as they're paid for the position that they're working in, I don't think we have an issue.
Well, the approval would obviously grant the pay,
Right.
so we can add that. Were there any more changes to this one?
Just, I don't know, it brings up the point that if the deputy chief is making the schedule and he puts that in there and he puts someone in a position 2 classifications higher than that be considered the chief's approval? Or does that
So that would come
muddy
with,
it up a little bit more?
that would come with or his designee, so obviously he could,
Okay, so
give the
whoever's
authority.
creating the schedule, if the deputy chief says that I'm a grade 1 today, and I'm going to act in a supervisory role, which would be 2 classes higher than me. That would be assumed that that's at the chief's, with the chief's approval.
Or his designee, yes.
Yeah.
Are there any other changes to this one? Sorry, I don't know why it's not tracking. But I'll highlight it. So that's what we changed. I did that already. I did it. It's not doing it. So are we good to, do we need to discuss section 5 more, or do you guys need to discuss that internally?
Give us a little bit more time to discuss that. We can discuss it whenever we take our next break. We don't have to take a break right now, but just to be sure.
Okay. Those are the only ones we had scheduled to discuss today. So if you wanted to take a break, I guess, so that we can,
Yeah, well,
Unless you have something else, we could take a break right now.
yeah, let's take a break.
Okay. 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Let's do 30.
Okay, 30 minutes. So we'll be back at 10:31.
Yes, sir. Okay.
what you got up for today, Cal? Who are you taking down? You're like, I don't know.
But I will say that we have a 12 hard stop because we have a city council meeting today and to get ready for, so what we get up to that point, we'll just agree to bring it back to the next meeting for further discussion from that point forward. So now we have some follow-up from some of the, some of the continuing articles.
So we left with union business. I think Jeff said he wanted to look at it on paper, the changes that were made. I think the one that had the most discussion was section 6, whether we were going with 2 or more per shift, or whether we wanted to input a number and remove the per shift requirement.
We're good with all of that. Just a quick question on the employee shall be entitled to receive union representation at any meeting that results in disciplinary action is under section 2. That is for the purpose of allowing that to be done anytime, right? On or
Did you
off
want to
duty.
move it to a different section?
No, it doesn't have to be. I just want to make sure that the intent there is for it to be allowed anytime, whether you're on or off duty.
Right, so I guess the spirit of it was to, I guess, address the concerns that were in section 5. So if you wanted to move it to section 5, we could.
Sure, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's all.
We left it there, and I can just tell you why it was originally where it was. It's because it says except as otherwise provided herein. So it's
Yeah,
wherever you feel more comfortable for
that's
for
fine.
it.
I didn't click to that. Thank you.
Yeah, so we can, I put it in 5, but we can leave it in 6 if that's where you want it. But I guess I can see why putting it in 5, because it says during the non-duty hours, and we can have it there so that it's clear that regardless of,
Right, I think as long as we're all clear on the spirit of the addition of it, wherever it ends up, I think that's fine.
when we spoke with the chief about it, he said that it was never a problem, and so we added that language specifically to address that concern so that it wouldn't become a problem with a future chief or moving forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we're good on that, on union business. Again, this one came with the adoption of the definition. So were there any questions or discussion on the union business definition? Okay. The next one, I think it's hours and overtime, but I could be wrong. Yes.
I think we're going to hold on hours and overtime for now unless you had something new for
No.
us to review. Okay, we can
Okay.
move on to temporary promotions.
Got it. On this one, we added, again, with the approval of the fire chief, and then we also made this change, regular scheduled shift, because we understand, we talked about it yesterday, they could be scheduled for overtime. So they would need to make the change, and any change wouldn't be effective until their next regularly scheduled shift in the event that that particular person was working a 48 or a double or overtime in between that time. We said 24 hours. If there's, I guess, discussion for that, that would be fine. We're also fine with the changes and amendments to section 6 that were proposed.
Yeah, we're good with everything. I just want to clarify one thing before we move on from that. In section 6, we talked about the cutoff time for 10 o'clock or when the schedule's entered into ESO. Just to be clear, that means that in that time period in the morning, we're following the policy and the contract, correct? So if it's identified after it's put into ESO that a mistake was made, that's going to be corrected. So we
I
can
think that's-
avoid any
yeah.
grievances.
No. I think that that's always the intent. So I guess that's why my question with Ms. Neeson was a concern that there were errors in the scheduling that needed to be looked at prior to being addressed so they can be corrected. And if that was a concern for putting in the later time. But I just recall you saying yesterday, no one's really checking it to know what the problem is. So if there's a problem and it's identified prior to that time frame, obviously we want it to be adjusted. So that's why we were asking at least I was asking about the necessity for a later time frame than
I got you.
8 a.m.
I
So,
may have just misunderstood you. I just wanted to make sure that if it's 10 a.m. at 10:30, a member looks at the schedule and sees that they were passed over for an upgrade during that period of time before 10 a.m., that it'll be corrected.
I guess explain to me like how that happens.
Okay, so if Jeff wants to be upgraded to captain and he looks at the schedule at 10:30 when he gets back to the station from a call and he sees that somebody somewhere is upgraded that he is senior to, so a mistake was made, the temporary promotion was not made based on policy in the contract, based on seniority, he's still afforded the right to call his deputy chief and say, hey, chief, I didn't get this upgrade. You upgraded this person over me. And that change is going to be made to avoid a grievance. That's what I'm,
Okay.
is
to,
that,
to use your example, if the schedule is made and Mr. Newsom doesn't have a written notification on file that he doesn't want the upgrade, and he comes back and they said, he comes, I'm just saying, and somebody else says, hey, I want this upgrade, and it creates a trickle down effect, and we have to force somebody to take an upgrade because they didn't fill out the form, is that going to trigger a grievance?
no, I shouldn't have used him as an example because he doesn't
Well,
take the upgrade.
I would use the same, whoever you would use, I'm just using in that analogy, not to say that,
Right.
because I know we had the conversation yesterday about him not wanting to take it. I'm just saying in general, that typically when you move one, it creates a vacancy for somebody else. So my question was, is it going to create a problem that somebody else, once the schedule's made and everybody's like, oh, I'm not subject to upgrades, I'm good, and they didn't fill out the form, because again, it does require it to be 24 hours before the shift, so they would have been required to take the upgrade anyway if they hadn't filled it. Is that gonna,
No, well, if they didn't send the notification in and they haven't followed step A before they got to step B. So,
Got it.
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, all things considered,
Oh, no, I was asking a separate
everybody sends
question.
in the notification that they're supposed to, and somebody has passed over that shouldn't have, will it be corrected so that we can avoid a grievance?
yes, I think that I think that should be happening now, but yes, I think that if in the situation that you presented, now, I will say that if you want to, we can add in language, because if that same person in your scenario finds out at like 8 o'clock at night, and it could have just been, it was a busy day, but 8 o'clock at night versus 10:30 is a big gap. So if we're asking if we need to talk about that, because if that's a continuing situation, you can address it right now in the contract, or y'all can talk about it in your policy discussions. Because see, I think right now, I think it gets really close to, when you put it in a contract, it's a lot harder to change it if it's not functional and feasible.
I agree.
But when you put it in a policy, at least y'all can round table and discuss it amongst yourselves for the people who do it every day, who know like all these different what if scenarios that come up. So I'm saying, like, I don't see a problem with it in the scenario that you gave at 10:30, but I can see how it could be a nightmare at 9 o'clock at night.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
And this is just based on the mistake, not on additional movement, just on a mistake. And you also know that once you start moving people throughout the day, that one initial mistake at 10:30 has a trickle down effect to
Right.
correct. So if you don't correct it at 10:30, every change that you make after that is a potential problem and a grievance.
Yeah, fair point. We're very close on this. Can we just talk about that one item and then we'll come
Yeah.
back to this and we'll probably be able to TA it the way it is? I just,
It doesn't have to be
wanna
done
talk
today.
about it.
I know that this one specifically is of a big importance because I know the amount of issues that it causes. And so I think that, again, what you're proposing and putting out, I think it's fine. But I think it's one of those things that you could probably eke out in a policy and not something that you want to bound yourself to for 4 years in a contract.
okay. Yeah, let's just talk about it and then next meeting, we'll try to put this one to rest.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I think that was all of them, right? Okay, so we'll have, during the finance presentation, we'll get you back the the other articles that we discussed today with those amendments and changes, and we can TM before we leave. And then we'll make a note to discuss temporary promotions and hours and overtime at the start of the next meeting.
Got it. Okay, we'll do a finance presentation from the city. Mr. June Ellis is going to do a presentation on this. And we ask that allow June to go through the presentation and hold questions until the end.
Just give me a minute to pull up that presentation.
Mr. Williams, I'm sure y'all are already going to do this, but could y'all email us this presentation?
We have it
Or-
printed for you, but I can email it to you as well.
Okay, or the flash drive, whatever is easiest, that's fine. Just so we have a copy of it.
All right, well, good morning. This is a presentation on the calculations, pay raises, incentives. This is going to show the city's proposal and the calculations for the union proposal. And as Mr. Williams stated, I only have 5 slides, so if you can allow me to get through the 5 slides, and then we'll entertain any questions after that. First slide, please. So at the top, in the top table, that will show the city's proposal, and the bottom table is the union's proposal for fire raises. I want to note that in fiscal year '25, we use the start date of December 1st, since we're already into the month of December. So that's a 10-month calculation for the city as well as the union throughout this presentation. So on each slide, it will, fiscal year '25 will only include 10 months in the calculation. So the city's proposal for fire raises in fiscal year '25 is a 4% increase. For '26, a 3% increase and a 1% increase on the pension. '27, a 4% increase, and '28, a 3% increase and a 1% increase on the pension. The 2% increase for pension, that is just the city's contribution. So that does not include the contribution from the members of the fire union. I just want to make that clear. So the first year, fiscal year 2025, 4% increase for the city. Total wages would be $726,328. And we have to include FICA, Medicare, and fire pension. That comes to a total of $882,126. For the union, again, beginning December 1st, you requested a 7% increase in the proposed contract. So that would equate to a total full-time wages amount of $1,271,074. So we included Medicare and fire pension for a grand total of $1,543,720. So that is a difference of $661,594 for fiscal year 2025. So I'm not going to go through all of the individual numbers. I mean, you see them on the screen, you have them in the hard copy, but year 2 or fiscal year 2026 with the 3% increase that the city is proposing and the 1% increase in pension, that's a total of $1,052,293. And for fiscal year 2026, under the union proposal, at your requested 5% increase, that's a grand total for that year, $1,400,374. Fiscal year 27 for the city, our proposed increase is 4%, which comes to a total of $1,135,927. The union at 7% comes to a total of $2,058,550. And for fiscal year 28, city's proposal, the 3% increase in wages and 1% increase in the pension contribution, that's a grand total of $1,134,452. And the union's request is the 5% increase for 28. That comes to a total of $1,573,321. So when you include all 4 years, and that's the far right column, for the city, totaling up those 4 years, it comes to a total of $4,204,799 for the city's proposal. For the union proposal, the total is $6,575,965. So the difference between the city and the union is $2,371,166. So I just averaged that out between the 4 years, and the difference is about $593,000 a year between the city and the union, based on that total difference of $2,371,166. Next slide. So these are this is the incentives for EMS monthly stipend. The city is proposing a $400 per month for a credentialed paramedic, $150 per month for a credential E2, and $225 per month for a credential E3. And in that second column where you see the number sign, those amounts we received from administration, fire administration, as being currently there are 9 total paramedics, 2 E3s and 5 E2s. So we based our calculation off of those numbers. And 2 columns to the right, what the fire chief wishes to do is move to E2 across the board as a minimum. So that's how we got up to the 150 total amount in fiscal year 27 and 28. At these amounts proposed by the city, the $400, $225 for E3s and $150 for E2s, again, including the Medicare and pension amounts for the city, fiscal year 25 comes to $58,296. And we use your numbers on the union proposal, $500 for paramedic, and for AEMT, EMT advanced at $350. We use those same numbers that you provided to get to the grand total at the bottom. And you will also notice that for each year, we use the same number of positions. So going back to the city's proposal as well as the union proposal, the 9, 2, and 5 at the top, those are actual positions that delivered the service. So all of the numbers are based on positions. So you see the difference there using our calculation or using our proposed amounts and the union proposed amount at the bottom, moving all the way over, and you see the amounts each year, 26, 27, 28 for each proposal. So the grand total for the city's EMS monthly stipend is $1,577,463. and the union's proposal is $2,929,981. So there's a difference there of $1,352,518 between what the city is proposing and what the union's requested proposal amount is. So that comes to an average, when you average it out over 4 years, that's about a $338,000 difference each year. Next slide. So this is the Juneteenth holiday the city is proposing to add. There isn't much of a difference. What we actually did in order to come up with the number to start was we took the last total amount paid for Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day, and we just averaged that number out for a starting amount and added the city's percentage increase, which is 4.343, and for the union, we added your increase, proposed increase, 7%, 5, 7, and 5. So those are obviously the numbers. A grand total for the city with adding Juneteenth is $379,569, and for the union, $400,941, which is a difference of $21,372. Next slide. So this is the education pay that the union requested. There are currently, and you requested that at $150 per month. Currently, there are 27 employees with an associate degree. So we used your total, multiplied that out by the $150, added Medicare and pension for each year. And those are like second year 30, 33, 36. Those are obviously assumptions we expect for that number to increase, obviously. So we get a grand total, if this was approved, of $265,611. So we know that currently you guys receive a one-time pay for anyone who receives an associate degree, whereas this would be monthly. So over the life of the contract, over the 4 years, we did a calculations of the difference between a one-time payment of $500 versus the total amount over the life of the contract, which is $6,900. So that's a 1,280% increase from what you currently get at the $500 one-time payment amount. Next slide. So this is the last slide, and this slide shows the total of all of the categories of what the city is proposing for each year. And you see the differences there for each year. For example, in fiscal year 2025, the city is proposing a total increase of $1,029,952, and the union's proposal is $1,769,418. So that's a difference of $739,475. So as you can see, each year the union's proposal is higher than the city's. Second year, it's $694,521 higher. Third year is $1.5 million higher. Fourth year is about $1.1 million higher than what the city is proposing. So the city's grand total for the proposal for this contract is $6,161,830 versus the union's proposal, which is $10,172,498. So that is a difference of $4,010,668 over the life of this proposed four-year contract. So that averages about $1 million a year difference between the city and the union. So these are all of the numbers that I'm presenting on today and that I've calculated. So we are open to any questions or comments.
How much does it, do you have a number on what it costs currently on the one-time payment of 500? On the education pay?
I don't have that with me.
Okay.
We can get that, though.
Yeah, just out of curiosity. I know that it just depends whenever they get it, right? And some of these numbers may be from 10 years ago, right, when they received that payment. So I just out of curiosity, just, no worries.
Any other questions?
I'm not sure I understand why there's a difference between the city's proposal to add Juneteenth and the union's proposal to add Juneteenth. What's the reason that there's a difference?
No, the numbers were based on the percentages of the wages increase because that changes the value of the holiday because we pay overtime. So that's the only reason why we're showing that. It's
Okay.
Not in like if it was going to be added, like if it's added in general at whatever rate, percentage rate it calculates, that's the amount that it would be. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay. So that was the only purpose for that is to show based on the 5% versus the 4% change.
The increase in paramedics for each year, is that an estimated increase based on the interest that has happened so far in people going to school? Is that where that comes from?
Partially, yes, and also thinking that the additional pay would probably act as an incentive. But that was just, we were trying to
Estimates.
project out.
I got you. Okay. And the numbers on the associate degree, is that all associate degrees or only the associate degrees in fire technology
So I
or
think
job-related fields?
it was related to job-related field moving forward. I think the policy beforehand might not have allowed for that, but moving forward, I think it was going to be related to only the ones in fire technology. But I think
So that 27 is for fire technology associates, not all of them?
I'd have to ask. I think we pulled everybody who had received the payment, or like everyone, when we calculated before, we looked at how many people actually had associate's degrees, because I think you can't retroactively, if we'd already given the 500, you can't take it back. So
Right.
I don't know if the 27, if you wanted to limit it to just fire technology, we can look at to see what the actual degree was
Well, I think that's
and
what it's,
provide a different width.
right. I think,
Yeah,
bring it
I'm
up.
saying
I think
like
that's what it said.
for going forward.
In the contract was fire technology. I might be lucky and have that already.
I think when we pulled the calculations here, we looked at everyone who had an associate's degree. We didn't distinguish between fire technology.
Okay. So that, no, okay.
But I do have that number, yes, for everyone who currently receives, or, well, we calculated the number of everyone, if everyone got the $500 one-time amount, that would total $63,000.
In fact, yeah. Could we get that number? The number of employees with an associate degree just in fire technology, the way it reads in the contract right now? Just at some point. It doesn't have to be right now.
Okay. Anything else at the moment?
Just to be clear, these numbers that are listed in each one of these sections for the city proposal, that is your counter from the, anything that's previously been discussed, right?
Right, correct.
Okay.
No questions at this time, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, the TAs,
So we have the ones we agreed upon with the proposed language on the screen. Management rights has been removed. The full discretion has been removed from management rights. And we adopted 5 business days. Sorry. This is wrong. I guess we didn't to clarify if you wanted it in section 2 or section 5. So if you tell me that it's fine, if you want it in section 5, I'll move it back.
It doesn't matter. As long as we all agree that it can happen on or off duty, that's all that we're worried about. It doesn't, wherever it lands in the article is fine.
It was supposed to be in section 5. Okay, I copied it straight from there. No, I copied it. You just accepted the wrong thing. I think for interpretation purposes, it should go in section 5. It takes 5 minutes to correct, if that's okay.
Sure.
Here, just, just go.
Did y'all have a proposed random drug testing policy? You mentioned getting one yesterday. Oh, we've got it? Okay.
Yeah, I emailed that
Okay.
document over to Ms. Reed yesterday
Haven't seen that yet. Okay.
for your review.
Okay, I think we're at a good point today to get 30 minutes back into our lives that we didn't have planned already to use for something else,
Lunch.
for lunch. Thank you for the discussion today. We had a good discussion. A couple of things, I guess, what we proposed to you in the financial plan is contingent upon the other articles being approved. So if something changes there, that could change. So I just want to make sure that's clear and make sure when we leave, that could happen.
It's clear.
Our next meeting is December 10th. It's a proposal of the full day meeting,
Yes, sir.
all day, and December 11th from 9 to noon.
Yes, sir.
With today being a city council meeting, we'll just say we won't do it on city council meeting days again. There's just too much going on, so,
Those are usually on Tuesdays?
yeah,
Okay,
first and third Tuesdays typically, yeah.
okay.
So we can work around that. So if there's nothing else from you or from my colleagues here, we'll adjourn until next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.